In part 2, we sail south along the Antarctic Peninsula, transiting through the famous Lemaire Channel and visiting the Ukrainian Vernadsky Station. We then make an amazing Zodiac cruise amongst the whales feeding in the waters of the Argentine Islands. We made landfall in Antarctica off Anvers Island with its wonderful snow-clad mountains. It was discovered by John Biscoe in 1832 during an expedition to find new sealing grounds in the Southern Ocean. Soon we were nearing the Lemaire Channel, which is one of the top tourist destinations in Antarctica. It is sometimes called Kodak Gap due to the beauty of the channel enclosed by steep glaciated peaks. The channel is 11 kilometers or 7 miles long and just 1,600 meters or a mile wide at its narrowest point. Wildlife is frequently seen in the channel as it can be ice-choked, favoring the presence of seals and penguins. However, the channel was ice-free, so we only saw penguins porpoising along. During our passage of the Lemaire Channel, a couple had arranged to exchange their wedding vows. Exiting the southern end of the Lemaire Channel, we passed by the large ship MS Midnatsal, waiting to enter the channel, as well as several foraging humpback whales. The weather was excellent, with no wind and an ocean that was almost mirror-like, making it very easy to spot whales amongst the bergy bit. As we sailed ever further southwards, the MS Midnatsal fell well astern. The ocean surface was so smooth that it acted like a mirror, and so you could see yourself in it when you looked down over the side of the ship. The Argentine Navy's Grosac Refuge, located near a Gentoo penguin colony, dates from 1955 and is named in honor of Paul Grosac, a French writer who authored a plea supporting the Argentines' claim to the British Falkland Islands. As we headed deeper south, this was our last chance to see the beautiful Cape Petrels. We passed by an ever-changing display of icebergs, including those with deep grooves in their surface, a telltale sign that they had rolled over, exposing what had previously been underwater. We stood off Galindez Island in the Argentine Islands in order to visit the Vernadsky Research Base. Vernadsky is a Ukrainian Antarctic research station named after the Russian and Ukrainian mineralogist Vladimir Vernadsky, who was the first president of the National Academy of Sciences of the Ukraine. Before being handed over to the Ukraine in 1996 and renamed as Vernadsky, the research base was a British research base named Faraday Station. The Ukraine took over the operation of the base and its research program after the UK sold it for a symbolic £1. With the Zodiacs in the water, we were soon off for a visit to the station. As Vernadsky is co-located with the Gentoo penguin colony, we were greeted at the landing site by a group of Gentoos.
I'm going to nose the boat in, and like I said, everyone stays seated, and you're going to sit down on the right.
Penguins frequently seem hesitant to enter the ocean, but once in the water, they are amazing swimmers that appear to fly along. We were lucky to have visited Vernadsky before the widespread nature of COVID-19 became evident. The voyage following ours was unable to visit any Antarctic bases due to COVID-19 concerns. Vernadsky Station is staffed by 24 Ukrainians in the summer and 12 over the winter. The main building has a very homey atmosphere. As one of the longest operating bases in Antarctica, Vernadsky Station has conducted scientific research studies on long-term temperature trends, concluding that Vernadsky is experiencing a significant warming trend of about 0.6 degrees centigrade or 1.1 degrees Fahrenheit per decade over the last few decades. At the back of the base is a noisy and smelly breeding Gentoo penguin colony. There were several hungry and demanding chicks laying in their rock nests. The traffic of the penguins moving back and forth from the colony to the ocean to both feed and occasionally clean themselves creates deep ruts in the snow, colloquially called penguin highways.
I don't even fucking see this shit.
Across the water from the base, a huge iceberg was shifting. We left Vernadsky Base for a Zodiac cruise through the Argentine Islands. Wordie House on Winter Island was built in 1947 as a British scientific base. However, in 1954, the base activity was moved to a new station named Faraday on the nearby neighboring Islands Island. The station was renamed Vernadsky in 1996 when the UK transferred it to the Ukraine. Without wave action, ice was slowly forming on the ocean surface.
Around the icebreaker.
Oh, thank you. Already? The other seal just slid into the water.
Leaving the seals behind, we set off in search of whales, and were soon blessed to come across a bay full of feeding whales. We were fortunate that the bay was full of whales, which came very close to us, so we got excellent views of them and could observe their feeding technique. Unfortunately, it was very difficult to film the whales around us as the boat kept moving because of both the surface movement and fellow passengers moving around in the boat. With the glaciated mountains on the mainland coast of Antarctica in the background and a clear blue sky overhead, this made the whale encounter a very unique experience. We were lucky to see humpback whales lunge feeding. During lunge feeding, the whales dive beneath a shoal of krill and then swim upwards at speed with their mouths wide open. They take in a giant mouthful of water and prey, which forces their throat pleats to expand several times their normal size. When surfacing, they force the water and krill out through their belly with their powerful tongue. The krill is filtered out and then swallowed. Over several hours of continuous lunge feeding, a whale can ingest more than a ton of krill, which is enough to give it sufficient energy for the entire day. A climatic scene from Moby Dick flashed through my mind as a huge whale swam directly towards our Zodiac and passed underneath it. Fortunately, the whale didn't sink our miniature rubberized deep wall. times, the whales would rest on the surface to take a break from feeding before resuming vacuuming up krill.
That was a burp.
To find out where the whales would surface next, one simply had to watch where the kelp gulls gathered on the surface, as they wanted to eat the krill brought up to the surface by the whales' lunge feeding.
So if you guys in the front can come down a little bit, lower down a little, you guys could take everything.
As the whale's head emerged, we could clearly see the callosities on it. Getting so close to a pod of humpback whales actively feeding was a unique and very memorable experience. The whales were totally at ease with our presence and carried on as if we weren't even there. As the whale's tail fluke submerged, it was time to reluctantly leave the whale show and race Gentoo penguins back to our ship. It was fascinating to see the sight of penguins porpoising along. While penguins can't fly through the air with their flippers, many penguin species take to the air as they launch themselves out of the water. Just before doing so, they release air bubbles from their feathers. This cuts down the drag on their bodies, allowing them to double or triple their swimming speeds quickly and to launch into the air. For example, most penguins swim underwater at around 6 to 11 kilometers per hour, but the fastest penguin, the Gentoo, can reach top speeds of 35 kilometers per hour when porpoising. The penguins left us at their colony and we motored on towards our ship. Leaving Vernadsky, we started the long passage across the Bellingshausen Sea to the very remote and infrequently visited Peter I Island. Leaving the Antarctic Peninsula, we sailed through an area that was full of feeding humpback whales. Everywhere we looked, there were whales in front of a beautiful background of glaciated mountains and huge icebergs. The glacier-draped mountains along the icy coastland of Grahamland were very beautiful in the sunshine. Humpback whales are identified by the underside and trailing edge of their tail flukes. Each one is different, just like a fingerprint. When the huge whales were juxtaposed with icebergs, the ginormous size of the icebergs was manifest. It was a wonderful experience to see so many whales actively sounding to feed. Suddenly, a lunge-feeding humpback with its pleats fully expanded rose up beside our ship, and just as suddenly slid back beneath the surface. Finally, we departed the rich whale feeding ground as we sailed away from the Antarctic Peninsula ever southwards across the Bellingshausen Sea towards the remote Peter I Island. In part 3, we reach Peter I Island and then sail further south and search for a route through the heavy sea ice to the Ross Ice Shelf. Along the way, we witnessed many interesting sights, including emperor penguins at sea and killer whales attacking a minke whale.
Take me somewhere